Welcome to Generations at Work, where our goal is to build bridges and not walls between the different generations in the workplace. Today, we're going to talk about how to lead and collaborate with the Millennial generation, or Gen Y. I'm Susan Davis.
And I'm Tim Elmore.
Before we begin, if you'd like to access our free Generations at Work playbook, or maybe you want to learn about leadership workshops and how we can work those into your organization, please visit maxwellleadership.com/generationsatwork.
So Susan, today we have two, I think, special guests. I'm going to call you guys special. You are two representatives from the Millennial generation. Would you take a minute and just introduce yourselves, Amanda?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Amanda LeFever. I'm the CFO and president at Mission Mobile Medical, and we're a mobile healthcare company from North Carolina, but a Utah native. I
Okay.
have 3 kids, and my daughter has a turtle now, so that's
Oh,
very
wow.
exciting at
It's a
our
milestone
house.
event.
They live a long time.
I heard.
There we go.
I
That's
learned
fun.
that later, though.
Yeah. Long life, long
Yes.
life. Ryan?
Yeah, Ryan Jenkins. I write books and speak at conferences about generational differences, as well as how to strengthen connection across multi-generational workforces. I'm married with 3 kids and 1 yellow Labrador, but used to have a turtle.
Okay.
I'll have
So
to
the
get
turtle's
advice.
gone, the dog's in.
The turtle was released and hopefully is still around because
okay.
they live a long time.
Yeah, they live a long time. That's right. That's right. Well, Tim, set us up. Let's talk a little bit
Yeah.
about the Generation Y, or the Millennial generation, and just what we know about them.
Yeah, so you guys are well aware of what I'm about to say. We've been throwing the Millennial generation under the bus for 50 years, throwing your shade on, my kids today, that sort of thing. But you're no longer kids today. The Gen Zers are the new kids on the block, and you're now well into your careers. The oldest among your generation is in midlife. So, and you're managing and leading. So I really look forward to hearing from you. So, audience, my 2 kids are both part of the Millennial generation. Bethany, our daughter, is 36. Jonathan is 32. They're in the midst of their careers. They've overcome the jitters and the nervousness of those early years, and now they're doing well. The Millennials make up the largest part of the workforce now. So all the older folks that used to say, kids today, the kids have taken over now.
Yes, they
and
have.
we're now going, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. So the boomers are on their way out, retiring at $10,000 a day or more, and I'm one of them. You're an Xer
I'm an
behind
Xer.
us, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so a couple of things about the Millennials. The shift, I think, I want you to comment on this, Ryan, because you've researched this really well. Whereas the Xers grew up perhaps in the 70s, where kids were taught to just figure it out themselves, the latchkey generation, where they probably came home. There was either a divorced home or mom was working, dad was working. They had to figure out life after school on their own. Millennials were often, not all the time, the hovered over generation, the helicopter mom or dad, and maybe not in your house, but so many kids became front and center. So Xers were not necessarily front and center. Would you agree? As an
Absolutely.
Xer?
I'm thinking my visual is bubble wrap around the child.
Yeah, right.
That's my visual of the millennial child.
But as an
'Cause I have a
Xer-
sister that's a millennial.
Okay, that's right.
And
Okay,
and
yeah.
I have a sister that's an Xer, and I have a sister that's millennial, and it was all hands on everybody protect Mary.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
and not protect, but just
Yeah.
provide and care for her, make sure she's
Yeah.
gotten everything she needs.
Yeah, part of the reason for that is in 1982, something happened. John Walsh and his wife had a son, Adam, who was abducted and later found dead. And it was horrible. So parents' worst nightmare. But instead of just mourning, he said, I am going to make sure this doesn't happen again. So he puts on this show, America's Most Wanted. We've all seen that. Yeah. He starts this center in Washington, D.C. for children that have been abducted and missing or whatever. We saw photographs of children on milk cartons missing, and you all thought as you poured the milk on the Cheerios, oh God, that could be my child. So we began to focus on our children. Not all, but many. And so children often became front and center. And that's when we decided we would give them trophies just for showing up on the team or whatever. Again, not projecting this on you, but Ryan, you know this. This is so 80 million millennials and largest generation in the workforce. I want to toss it to you now. Just talk out of your experience. What would you add or delete from that data? And I'll start with you, Amanda.
I think what I would probably add or
Yeah.
kind of delete maybe,
Yeah.
and we can get like some more understanding around
Sure.
is the entitlement piece.
Mm.
Like I always been in boardrooms,
Yes.
or I've experienced multiple times where it's been like, oh, don't hire millennials.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
oh, don't do
Yeah.
that. They're so entitled and they never want to come to work. And
Mm.
it just, I'd look around the room and
Yeah.
there's millennials in the room
Yes,
with me, right?
and you're
I'm
one of
like,
them.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm one
I
of
mean,
them.
we got the young
And
people on
so-
this side.
Yes, the old over here. Yeah.
And so it's just always been interesting, this sense
Yeah.
of entitlement. I think it's just a misunderstanding that
Mhm.
like we really are striving for more, I think, and kind of demanding this work-life balance that some people don't
Yeah.
resonate with
That's right.
or have experienced at
Yeah.
all. And so we're saying, does it have to be 8
Yeah.
to 5? Does
Yeah.
it
Or longer.
or
Sometimes my
longer?
generation would
Yeah.
pride ourselves on our busyness at 9 o'clock.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
do I
Yeah.
have to be there on
Yeah.
Fridays, or can I have one day where I work at home,
Yeah.
or
Yes.
can go
Yeah.
to the dentist,
Yeah.
or things like that? And it's been interesting to see that entitlement piece. I
Yeah.
think kind
Yeah.
of be misconstrued with
Mhm.
like the striving
Yeah.
piece of it.
It goes
You're
back
right.
to it's not the way we did it, but it's different, but not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Right.
just
It may be
different.
getting better.
It may be actually a
Yeah.
better
For
what you've
thing.
added. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
good.
for sure.
What about you,
Ryan?
Brian?
Yeah, I think the one thing that stood out to me that I didn't hear, which probably has shaped our generation, the millennial generation, the most, was the Oregon Trail, of course,
Yes.
the video game, right?
Yeah. That's so true.
Everyone was
Dysentery.
playing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And avocado toast, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
that's right.
Wouldn't be
Exactly.
a millennial conversation without that.
See, I tween. I tween over the
Yes, you
millennials
are.
on the
You are.
avocado toast.
Yeah.
I'll go with you.
Yeah, and I think it's always important. Like I always like to preface conversations like this with the idea that generations are clues, not absolutes. Right? They're
Yes,
just really big
yes.
clues on how we
That's right.
lead, recruit, sell, connect, communicate.
Yeah.
But they're at the end of the day, we're all individuals. But certainly they're really big clues, and now more than ever,
Yeah.
we can use it as a shortcut to build rapport and build influence.
Yeah.
But for me, what I really find fascinating with the millennial generation is we're one of the last generations to straddle both the pre-digital and post, in the new digital world. We're the last generation that will remember a world pre-mobile devices
Yes.
and the internet. And so that's going to be really key for this generation to kind of bridge and
Yeah.
to hold both sides accountable,
Yeah.
finding the right balance between high tech and high touch.
You're right.
And then the last thing I'll mention too, which I find fascinating when it comes to generations, is we've always looked towards the emerging generations with more negativity. I mean,
Yeah.
go back
Always.
to
Always.
always.
Socrates.
You've heard it for
Yes.
Socrates,
Yes.
right?
Every generation.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't say entitled. He didn't call it the
Yeah.
emerging generation entitled, but he called them disrespectful and
Yeah.
lazy, which
Yeah.
about nails it for what
Yeah.
everyone thinks about
Yeah.
every other emerging generation. But what's fascinating, according to the research, is we tend to look towards the emerging generations with more negativity because as we age and as we gain competencies in our career, it becomes easier and easier and easier to spot the incompetencies in
Yes.
others.
Yeah.
So as we age and as we gain experience in our organization or industry, it becomes that much easier to look
Yeah.
back and go, oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
this emerging generation doesn't have it together.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising millennials were labeled as entitled. Now
Yeah.
Gen Z's the same, et cetera. So
Yeah.
it's
So
it's a
true.
pitfall we got to be aware of.
It's a lot of misunderstanding, it feels like.
Yeah, it
just-
is. And we often forget that was said about us.
Right,
back
right.
in the day.
I think I asked you that one
Yeah.
time. It's like every
Yeah.
generation says that about the next generation.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, as the boomers in the 60s were out revolting and burning flags and bras and buildings and everything else. And the term generation gap was birthed when we were young.
Yeah.
And now we're the old geezers, that are going, kids today. We kind of forget what happened.
What about the gap in Generation Y or the millennials? Do you see a gap between
Earlier
the
and later.
older
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
and the younger generations in
Yeah,
millennial?
I
Tell us about
absolutely
that and
do.
what you see the difference.
So for me, I've always been considered an elder millennial,
Yeah,
I guess,
yeah.
because some of the X came into my life as well. Like there was latchkey. My parents were divorced.
Yeah.
And I had to come home and like figure
Mhm.
things
Yeah.
out. And, we were spring chickens free range
Yes, yes.
out like be home before dark
Yeah.
type of
Mhm.
style.
Mhm.
And I see that like my parents weren't necessarily helicopter parents, but I'm starting to see that I am a lot more helicopter
that-
parenting
yeah.
and that everything's more prescripted,
Yeah,
right? Like we
yeah.
have play dates and this is
Mhm.
happening then and this is
Yeah.
happening there. But for
Yeah.
the most part, like the 80s kids, I think when it started to get into the 90s was really when it started to
Yeah,
shift from like this hands off to
Yeah.
more hands on.
It's so true. In fact, I did a book called Generation IY, and it was about the second half of the millennials, and they
Mhm.
were measurably different than the 80s kids.
Mhm.
You're
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah, we see a distinct difference too, and not to be cheeky, but back to the dividing line is those that played and those that didn't play Oregon Trail. Like, really, I'm not kidding you. I'm not kidding
Yeah.
you.
Oh my gosh,
It's
I
a
love it.
perfect example because
Yeah.
we're older millennials up here, but we played Oregon Trail.
Oh, yes.
The younger millennials didn't play it.
Yeah.
Why? Because they had mobile technology and social media,
Yeah.
much shinier innovations. And that is one of the other things that at the top of this conversation we left out is the pivotal role that innovations and technology have
Yes.
played in molding not only the consumer behavior,
Yeah.
but the workplace behavior of an entire generation. But we see distinct differences because a generation that came of age with much shinier, more connected devices are
Yeah.
show up very different at work
Yeah.
than
No
the older
doubt.
millennials.
No doubt.
I mean, as an Xer, we played Pong
yeah.
or Donkey Kong and Frogger
Sure.
and Pac-Man, you
Yeah.
know, and that was a big deal. So
Yeah.
I didn't play
true.
Oregon Trail.
I have to play Oregon Trail.
Let's talk about values of the millennials and the values that your generation bring to the workforce. We'll start with you, Ryan, and then we'll come over you, Amanda.
Yeah, so guys, I think when we look at, I think the biggest word that comes out in my mind is efficiency and autonomy. I think is what really stands out for the millennial generation, and efficiency because again they wanna work smart, right? I think previous generations it was this idea of work hard, play hard, or hard work gets rewarded. And then with the millennials, we really saw this shift to how do we leverage technology to get more done in less time, to kind of have that balance between work and personal lives. And so efficiency really runs is a big theme in my mind. And then the other thing that I always find fascinating, a lot of our audience find fascinating, is the appetite around feedback. When we look at previous generations, it was kind of no news is good news, right? If I don't hear from my boss, like all is well. But as we look as employees trend younger, they tend to want more frequent feedback.
That's right.
And it's fascinating. It causes so many folks by surprise, and that's really where you see these generational differences pronounced. Because you have a baby boomer that's leading a millennial, and they're thinking, well, if I wasn't hearing from my boss, all was well. But now you got this millennial that's like, I haven't heard from my boss this week. Like, am I fired? Do I need to be looking
What's
for
wrong?
a job?
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that kind of stand out to me.
Which makes me think about engagement. You know, our engagement of our employees is down so much. And I work with a lot of our corporate clients and I see it. And they're like, why are they not more engaged? And I think you just hit the nail on the head. And I have asked, like, how often do you meet one-on-ones? And I've had them say every 6 months. I'm like,
Oh, jeez.
you can't do that.
That's
you,
so
there-
old school.
You have to engage weekly, bi-weekly, if not daily sometimes.
Yeah.
Just as positive, building that feedback bank of positive feedback as well to encourage
the research
behaviors.
I've read on Gen Z is they want multiple check-ins daily. And for a boomer manager, we're going, are you kidding me? But think about the video game they played. They know exactly what level they're on and exactly, they have multiple check-ins with the score on that. So there's a huge gap that we don't realize what signal we're sending as an older boss when we're not talking at all.
Yeah.
And they might suspect something's wrong. Something might be really, really wrong.
And they might disengage and go somewhere else, which could be.
that's right.
All right, Amanda, what do you think about the values?
I think one thing is collaboration in a lot of ways. Millennials want to be in the room. We don't have to necessarily be in charge of the room, but we want to be in the room and we want to hear what's going on and be able to contribute.
Yes.
And I've noticed too with, I loved what you were saying about engagement. Even in our company, like we are very intentional about engagement. We meet all hands every Monday. We meet all hands every Wednesday for business meeting. And then you have a one-on-one with your direct reports every single week.
So good.
So everyone knows like where they're at.
Yeah.
And we have this question that's like, are you swimming? Are you sinking? Or are you
Yeah.
drowning? Right?
Yeah,
Like it's like,
Yeah.
where are we at in this?
You're
That's
creating
good.
that
Yeah.
culture, though,
Yeah.
of where
For
people
dialogue.
feel
Yeah.
like included. And when they feel included, they feel engaged. When they feel engaged, they produce.
Yeah, and they bring the agenda too. And so it's like, come with, if you have any questions, or here's what we're working on, and here's how we're going to move forward. And we found a lot of success with that, with the younger generation and even the older generation. Like we're all kind of on the same page, it seems like, and we're all moving and rowing in the same direction.
I love that. I work with an organization that also does daily stand-ups.
Oh,
And they're only 5 minutes, right?
Yep.
They're not long, but it brings that connection.
Yeah.
It brings the collaboration. I love that.
Yeah, I do too. So many millennials are now in management positions. Not all, but many. You're both leaders of companies and organizations. Talk about first, what would others expect from a millennial as they lead? I know there's differences. We're all unique individuals, but talk about your leadership style as a millennial. But then also, if it's a millennial colleague, a peer, what would most resonate? What kind of leadership would they want, do you think? Okay, do you want to?
That's good. Yeah,
Start?
that's a
Okay.
great question. So I think the leadership style that's really, I don't know, it started even when I was younger, the
Okay.
leadership style that I took on. And when I was 16, I started waiting tables, and I waited tables for 4 years. And,
Yeah.
you know, Friday and Saturday nights are crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's date night, everybody's coming in, right? You're running around
Yeah.
wild and
Yeah.
making, it just was,
Yeah.
it was nuts. But
Yeah.
I had this leader, his name was John, and he was always in the mix with us. And I noticed that. Like he was washing dishes, he was cleaning tables, or he was flipping steaks, or he was running food. And
Wow.
so the whole time he was there with us, getting his hands dirty instead of like barking orders from the
Yeah.
corner or hiding in the office.
Yeah.
And I always respected
good.
that. Like here we are together in this moment, like doing the thing, right? And it almost felt like we were accomplishing.
That's
Well, we
motivating.
were accomplishing
Yeah.
it together.
Yeah.
So I think that that made a big difference for me, that lead by example style
That's
of
huge.
leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yeah.
is in a lot of ways how I feel like I lead
Yeah.
in ways, but also valuing people, right? John
Yep,
Maxwell's
that's
like,
right.
you just got to value people. It doesn't matter. I lead
Yeah.
boomers, I lead
That's
Gen
right.
Zs, right? But if,
And the
I don't
value
know.
they bring.
yeah, and the value they
true.
bring. And
Yeah.
if you're going to be a jerk or an a-hole, like that doesn't
Yeah,
matter
that's right.
generationally, right?
That's
Like
right.
it just,
It's true.
you have to respect and actually be, I don't know, what is it? It's Dale Carnegie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, how to win friends and influence, like
Influence people.
genuinely interested
Yeah.
in people before you can expect to like take from them in
That's
any
so
way.
true.
And this is
Yeah.
a theme where, as we're talking to the different generations, the theme we're hearing. They want to be valued, number one,
Yeah.
but they just want to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
They want to be, and they love leaders that lead by example.
Yeah. People do what people see, don't they?
Yeah,
They do what they
100%.
see.
Yeah.
Children do what they see. Unfortunately, my lecture was great.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, Ryan.
What about you?
Yeah, man, inspired me to tell a story with your
Okay.
wonderful story. So recently I was working in the printing industry, and there was a gentleman that shared a great story with me. He was a brand new young CEO in the printing industry, which is old industry, right? But so think when
Yeah.
you go to the grocery store, any jar or box that has images on it that comes from the printing industry, and so he was sharing with me that this new millennial CEO inside this organization hired the first millennial salesperson, a younger millennial, and it was a gamble, right? Because their workforce was very seasoned, and he said, "No, I want to usher in some new ideas and thought processes and procedures when it comes to sales." And so this individual came in the organization. Their first day there, this young millennial, after their stand-up meeting for the sales, everyone left except for that new millennial salesperson, and they never left their desk. And the new millennial CEO is thinking, "Oh my gosh, did I make a mistake? I rolled the dice. I'm thinking of trying to get some fresh blood, figure out how to move the organization forward." At the end of the quarter, though, that new millennial was the head that had the most sales of anyone else in the whole, and never left the office. And what they were doing is they'd sit at the desk, and they said he was just on Instagram, and he was direct messaging all these local craft breweries that were wanting new labels, and just crushing it in a whole new way.
Isn't
And
that
so it opened up this whole new avenue in which
Pipeline.
A new way to do
Yeah.
things.
And so back to your question, as far as as millennial leaders, again, they can kind of bridge the gap where they're ushering in these new concepts, new ideas, new approaches, and can really start to kind of chart the course in a new direction. So it's exciting. It's a great opportunity.
It is exciting.
That's good. In terms of success, how do you define success as a millennial? What's success look
Ooh.
like?
That's such a good question. So I think it always depends on like success. How is it success
Yeah,
at work?
yeah.
Is it success at home, in your relationships? Is it your health? I think that we as a generation have really brought that to the forefront of the work-life balance. And for me, I don't want to have to sacrifice my relationship with my kids and look up one day and my husband's gone, right. But I'm super successful. So I want to try to find that balance really. And then two, like make sure that about a year ago, I started having really just like bad health problems. And in a lot of ways, I think it was my body that was like, you need to slow down. Like you need to stop. And so I was out. And when I was out, I wasn't with my kids and I wasn't with my husband. I wasn't at work, right? So I think I started to take for granted like how important your health is and having that balance of like not just push. And so for me, success is being able to navigate. I don't know that you'll ever get a full balance, to be
So
honest.
good.
It's so hard. And every day is going to be different, but to be able to navigate the different needs
Yeah.
and seasons too.
Which I
that's
think
good.
even the boomers or even Gen X, it's a badge of honor to outwork your
Oh,
competitor.
yeah.
Right.
And I even tell people, if you just outwork competition, you'll be great, you know?
It's so
But
true.
it brings it to a new light. I think as the older I get, I define it more a little bit like that. Maybe it's coming back full circle.
Well,
Yeah.
if I can just add one quick
Yeah.
thing, it's so true. I, early in my career, could have been called a workaholic. I remember coming home to my wife one night, and she was in tears saying, I feel like a single woman. That was my wake-up call to this. And I knew better. I think I taught something on this, you know?
Yeah.
Darn it. But this balance, we all want it. I think if we're 75, we go, I know that's right. But sometimes I think for men, I don't know if you think this is right, Ryan, you tell me if I'm wrong, but we get trained for our work. We're not trained to be husbands, at least, you know. So we want to stay where we're winning, not where we're losing. And the proverbial workaholic was born, and we love the accolades our assistant gives us and our manager gives us, and it leads to not good things.
But even, you know, women, as we've come up in the workforce, it's almost workaholic to prove.
Right.
Yes.
It's to prove
that we
Yeah.
can,
that we
keep
can
up.
keep up.
That's
Yeah.
right. I know.
And still be a mom.
And still be a mom.
That's
and,
so true.
And do everything
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you have to do. And
Yeah.
I love that perspective.
You want to make your comment?
Yeah, so I think as far as success, I mean, lately what's been really burning in my brain is psychologists say we have 3 psychological nutrients, which are competency, autonomy, and connection.
Yeah.
And so competency, it's this idea of just having a skill set that you can contribute to your tribe or your community. And so feeling some type of that you're adding value to the group around you. Autonomy, you know, we're kind of talking about that here, this balance of having control over personal and professional, that balance. So autonomy is really important. But the last one I think we really underestimate is just connection. So that's connection with our colleagues or connection at home. And I think to your point in your example, as far as, you know, sometimes it's easier to work and harder to be at home because because we can measure the things at work, right? We can measure, are we doing well? What were the sales, revenue, profit, all that stuff. When we come home, we can't measure the success. And specifically when it comes to connection, we can't measure that at all. So it tends to slip right through our fingers. We tend to kind of focus on those other two. But lately in my mind, those are kind of the 3 things that I'm trying to keep my eye on as it relates to success, both personally and professionally.
Yeah.
I love
no
that.
doubt.
I love the balance. I love the balance.
I do
I gotta
too.
get better at that.
Yeah.
Me too.
Me too.
I gotta get better.
Can we double click on the connection thing? You and I are friends. You're pretty consumed with helping organizations connect right now. And you've even developed an app. It's not just an event you do. Would you take a minute and just talk about that? Because I think that's really what we're all longing for.
Yeah.
Multiple generations who actually connect with each other.
Yeah, you're right. Because the problem isn't that we have multiple generations that we work across. The problem is we lack connection. And so it just so happens that we're in different life stages, and that's what tends to make the connection or the disconnection wider.
Yeah.
And so really it just comes down to connection. And I became fascinated with this topic because I wrote a book on Gen Z, the youngest generation entering the workforce, and was coming across all this research that was highlighting how disconnected, isolated, lonely Gen Z was. They're now twice as likely to experience loneliness than our elderly population. We've never had that imbalance. It's backwards. And this was all pre-pandemic. So I was doing all this and I thought, oh my gosh, we need to figure out how to connect with this generation and then figure out how can organizations be the ones to actually facilitate that connection. So I began down this journey to try to figure out how do we cultivate more connection at work. Turns out every generation is experiencing more disconnection. It's still most acute amongst Gen Z, but according to our research, over 72% of folks say they experience disconnection at least monthly, with 55% saying at least weekly.
And that's something.
And so we're more divided than ever. But I think where people get this idea of connection wrong is that we often think, if I just get around people, and that's not it, right? Loneliness is not the absence of people. It's the absence of connection. You can come into a big office filled with your team, but if you're not actually building connections across those different generations, you're not actually checking that box and getting the all the benefits that come from connection. And so we have to really focus on building and nurturing those. And so, we didn't want to just write the book and do speeches on connections. So we developed a tool called Rivet. So it's like a rivet.
Okay.
So think of a mechanism that connects two things to make them stronger. And so folks take an assessment. It's about 7 minutes, psychology based. And then we match folks that are scientifically proven to develop a strong bond. So it's just within
Cool.
organizations. So
Yeah.
Netflix is using it with all their folks that are coming in the organization as an onboarding tool to get folks entrenched.
That's cool.
Walmart's relocating folks of all generations back to Bentonville, and they're using it to connect folks. So there's so many opportunities where they're relocating, starting a new job. We're leading above our generation, right? There's opportunities where we feel highly isolated, and these are opportunities for us to create more connection.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
that.
It sounds like a dating app. Like you're connecting people.
But just
But
relationship.
at work.
Yeah,
At work.
right.
That's really
Oh,
yeah.
that's so good.
It's
Because we
fun.
talk relationships are the foundation to the leadership.
It really is.
And
Yeah.
if people aren't going to go along with you, they can't get along with you and trust you.
Yeah.
And we're hearing that theme over and over again.
Well said.
Yeah.
Good. So I want to talk to you about, because you're kind of a big generation in between X and Z. Many of you are in leadership positions now. How do you balance the timeless values and virtues, which I know you both embrace, you know, work ethic, punctuality, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
you know, blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
But then there's this new stuff coming in. New stuff, new generation
Yeah.
that don't always, like in other words, a Gen Zer might come in 10 minutes late and go, what's the deal? What's up with that? And the boss is going, I'll tell you what's up with that. How do you help us? Help the younger and older generations listening right now. How do you balance the timeless and the timely and somehow bring them together?
Such a good question. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah.
Amanda
look
thinks
ready.
about her
Yeah,
question
answer.
that's going to
That's
totally
right.
trump mine. I'll go. You know, when I think about it, I think about this idea, especially thinking about cross-generationally, that every generation brings unique value to the table, and it's up to us to figure out what are those strengths and how do we leverage them accordingly.
Yeah.
But too often, a this is always how we've done it mindset is what you're describing.
Yes.
A this is always how we've done it mindset. It's a slippery slope
Yes, it is.
to irrelevance, and now more than ever. And so
Say
I
that
think,
again.
Yeah.
I think people need to hear
Yeah,
that.
it's a
good
great
one.
statement.
It's a good
You've only said one good thing.
Just say it again.
Get ready.
Ready?
This is the clip. This is my moment.
That's right.
A this is always how we've done it mindset is a slippery slope to irrelevance.
Yes.
That's so
Right?
So
So
true.
it's, everything you're describing is like, oh, this is how it's always been done.
Yeah.
Let's continue to keep doing this
Yeah.
way. And so what I think would help folks is we need to prioritize why over the way.
Yeah.
Right, we need to be
That's good.
married to the values and
That's
the
right.
mission and the timeless leadership principles, but we need to be open to the approach. How do we
Yeah.
execute?
That may change.
Because that changes on a dime. And we all know that all too well in the last 5 to 6 years, how quickly things change. So just have that in the back of your mind. How do we prioritize why over the way?
Yeah.
So
Love it.
let me ask this, because I get this question a lot from leaders. How do you handle the objection when someone says, well, I think we should be in the office for connection?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to be in the office. I want to work from home. They don't understand. How do you handle that with, leaders? What's the best balance
Yeah.
there?
Well, we've had to compromise, to be
Okay.
honest. So we first started out, like, our shop guys were working 8 to 5 days a week. And they're like, we don't want to be here like that. Like, we want to come in earlier and we want to leave earlier. And we only want to work 4 10s. And we're like, okay. Well, let's try
Still get
that,
the hours in.
right?
Yeah.
Yes. Or with our office folks, like Monday and Wednesday are non-negotiable. You're in the office.
We need
If
you.
you're
Yeah.
there, you're in the office.
Yeah.
Even if you're remote, you're in the meetings. That's like our culture days,
Yep.
and they're super important. And so we were pretty hard and fast with those. But then it's like, okay, well, Thursdays things kind of slow down. So if you want to be at home on Thursdays and work at home, cool,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna ping you on Teams, and
Yeah.
we're still gonna be connecting, but have that flexibility to be able to get away from the office and be at home. So I think being open to like hybrid models
Yeah.
and finding
That's
out
good.
what really works for your actual team. Like, we'll have people that come on Mondays and then they leave at 2 or leave
Yeah.
at 12, but they're there for
The key time,
core,
yeah.
the core key times.
But you said something interesting. You said these are our culture days. So you're still building culture. You're still building leadership, still building influence in a hybrid model.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think so many people think that can't be done.
Yeah.
yeah.
It's more intentionality, probably what you're
Yeah,
doing.
we've been really successful with the
Yeah,
model.
that's good.
Very
so
good.
good, Amanda.
Yeah.
That reminds me of some research that we put in our book where the pros of social media for any generation, any user, the pros of social media happen when we're using social media to supplement existing in-person
Yeah.
relationships.
Yes.
It becomes a con. Social media is detrimental to us when we use it substitute
Yes.
real life
That's really good.
in-person
Yeah.
connections. And I think there's a ton of parallels to this conversation around hybrid work, that if you're building culture in the office, those are the times where you're together. You have to be intentional.
Yeah.
Connection just doesn't just happen,
Yeah.
right? We can be in the presence of others, but we still might not
Yeah.
be connected. So we have to be very intentional about the days when we are together.
Yeah.
And that can sustain us for the times that we're digital and remote and
Right.
virtual, because we can rely and hang our hat on that sturdy hook that is connection.
That's
So
good. Love it.
Connection equals conversion. And I like when I teach communication, we have to be able to connect to convert a relationship,
Yes.
a sale,
Yes.
a memory, whatever. We got to be able to convert things in our life, but it's through that connection.
Yeah.
I just sit there.
Good.
Yeah.
You want to do the next one?
Yeah. We have maybe 2 more?
Yeah, that's
All right.
what I'm thinking.
So I have a good one. So this is in terms of hopes and fears. Hopes and fears.
Oh, excellent.
What are your best? What are your biggest hope for the future? Your biggest fears for the future?
So personally, my biggest fear is like, I have this low key anxiety that everything's gonna fall apart. Like as you said, at any minute, right? Like, we've got
Keeping you on the edge.
yeah, I'm
Enjoy
just
the rest of it.
It's low key.
It's low key kind of
Yeah,
fear,
yeah, but
right?
it's there.
But it's
Yeah.
there. It's there all the time, right? We've got a big team. We've got a big mission. We're
yeah.
really trying to do something. And so my biggest fear is that like I will become the leadership lid, or that I will,
yeah.
it's all going to fall apart. Like
Yeah.
we're going to do something that is just
yeah.
catastrophic somehow.
Yeah.
But I'm learning that it's not necessarily that. Like each iteration, we continue to get better. That even if something bad does happen, that the failure usually teaches us something, and that
good.
if we can fail faster, that maybe we're going to do better. Yes, we're going to grow faster.
Yeah.
So my hope is that we continue to embrace like failure and just move with it almost, and
so
just
good.
accept it as part of the growth journey, and that's how you get better.
Where a lot of other generations older, and some failure's not an option.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
In that clone
Yeah.
somewhere,
Yeah.
failure's not an option.
Yeah,
yeah,
Right. Where
exactly.
I love failing forward or
I do
chasing
too.
failure.
Yeah,
as
and
my
realizing it's
leak
going to
and
happen.
Yeah,
Let's learn
it's
quickly.
part of it.
just
Yeah.
learn from it.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm
good.
even trying to teach my young kids that. Like, I want you to fail. Just reflect and learn from it.
Try the thing.
Yeah,
That's
try
right.
it. Just do it and
Yeah.
learn what you need to learn.
That's right.
Yeah, on my way here to this very interview, we're here in Atlanta, and I live here in Atlanta. And as I was driving here, stopped at a four-way stop, and there was a young woman with a backpack. So I was close to a university. I won't say which university.
Okay. Yep.
And they were crossing the street, and in the middle of the road, stopped. She never took her head out of her device. She stopped in the middle of the road to finish a text message. And that's my biggest fear.
Yeah.
Right.
Is thinking
Wow.
that humanity
Yes.
is going to retreat to these devices, leaving
Yeah.
us highly isolated and
Yeah.
alone. And so, and my biggest hope to counterbalance that is the millennial generation, because we're, again, the generation that
Yes.
is standing between both worlds, right? We were
Yes.
first to social media, we went high tech, and now as parents, I've talked to so many millennial parents that know, like, hey, whoa, we need to figure out ways to balance the high tech and high touch, and we should be more play based, start to release the reins, not have the stranger danger mindset like we talked about.
Right.
And so I think we're at this point where we have an entire new generation of parents that can kind of steer us in a completely new direction, and that's what I'm hopeful for.
Love it.
Wow, that is so good. Yeah.
One last quick question. If you had one word of advice for other generations on how to connect with you as a part of the largest generation of the workforce, just one line, what would it be?
Genuine interest.
Yeah, good. Show genuine interest.
Yeah, genuine interest. Just
Yeah.
in general, like the person, right? Not
Yeah.
just the person, but their work. And I don't know, I feel like that's such a
I do too.
a
Yeah.
key.
And that's true for any generation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It goes across all the generations.
Yeah. Good. Good.
So,
My answer would be provide clear direction. I
Yeah.
think what we don't think about connection. Sometimes we have to connect our teams to the mission and to the
Yeah.
organization and where we're heading. Too often, I think we leave our
Yeah.
millennial workforce or even Gen Zers without clear direction,
Yeah.
and they disconnect because I don't know what to do.
It's fuzzy.
Am I even
Right.
part of this?
Yeah.
That
Yes.
6 month where I don't check in with my boss, like
that's
they
right.
think I am
Yeah.
not connected at all
Yeah.
here. Do I even work here? I'm not sure.
I'm coming, but I don't know.
Your boss is swearing you
Get
don't.
the paycheck.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right. That's
Get
right.
the paycheck. Wonderful conversation.
good.
Oh, this
Good.
is so good. We get to hear all day. Amanda, thank you. Ryan,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Tim, thank you. We want to thank you for listening in. Again, if you want the free Generations at Work playbook, or if you want to learn about how to bring generational diversity training into your organization, visit us at maxwellleadership.com/generationsatwork. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next podcast.